So, religion aside, let's just say that it's something that I'd love to do, right? As much as I'd love to have two wives, I've always found it to be kind of a mental quandary for myself, assuming that deep down, of course, women benefit from the dynamic. They may even willingly accept the dynamic, could also possibly be making some type of moral sacrifice themselves. What's always held me back from going that far, with the polygyny thing, is that I've always just kind of felt a little bit bad. Like, even if I can create that dynamic, even if my value is high enough such that they would go ahead and say, okay, let's do it, there's a part of me deep down that feels almost guilty for subjecting them to that, even if they might think they want it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you, are you a father?
I'm not.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that I draw this comparison to generally being a father of children, a man who bears a son or a daughter and is giving all that love to that child, and realizes they have more love and capabilities to have more additional children. Are you going to feel bad that there might be sibling rivalry that takes place by having other children? And I understand people will sit there and say, "Well, that's two completely different things," and I'm going, really, it's not. You're dividing your time, you're dividing your resources, you're dividing your ability to ever pour all your efforts into one child or multiple children. And when you have again, the framework that's put into place, and I think, again, I know you said all religion aside, but this is where, again, for me, I go back to, there are being prescriptive laws within Torah and the Bible that sits there and tells you how to do this correctly so that you exactly avoid jealousy. Some men, we never tell another man how to run his household. However, some do who are practicing polygyny outside of the religious faith. They'll have hierarchies. The first wife is the main wife. The second ones fall subject to her. I myself do not do that because to me that can breed a ground for jealousy, and it just leaves you open for a lot more problems to come along down the way, as we saw in scripture as well, even with Sarah and Hagar and Leah and whatnot. So there are definitely examples within the Bible where it shows the strife that happens and could happen within polygynous relationships. But you see that within monogamous relationships as well too. I mean, to blame the institution is not the issue. It's more or less, how are you running your household and how are you doing these things. So I would draw that comparison to, again, a father with having more than one child. And if you've got, it's not for everybody, definitely. No, our position is not sitting there saying, hey, every man should be out there having more than one wife. No, it's definitely something that, your capabilities, how you're set up, what your framework is in your household. Um, and you would know, I think, if, can I pull this off? Yes or no? And is it going to be beneficial for my particular life, my home? Nobody wants to live in a home full of strife and grief and walking on eggshells. And believe me, that would drive a man crazy. I mean, and yes, you do have to have definitely a lot of patience for dealing with multiple women, because let's face it, as you guys were talking about earlier, men are very linear. Women are more emotional. They're all over the place, and you kind of have to make sure that you maintain that strong framework to understand that when they start going off the reservoir there, that you're able to pull them back and show them that, hey, no, this is where we're going, and you are not the prize. Men are the prize. Now you have to realize that you are blessed. I'm blessed to have you, but you are definitely blessed to be a part of what we've got going on and being here. So, as far as you feeling bad, I get it. Again, everybody's got different feelings and emotions on it, but for me, I run everything. What I do for one, I'm willing to do for the other. So there's never really any time that any of my wives could sit there and say, "Well, you do this for her, but you don't do this for me." No, no, no. So that does take a lot. It does take a lot of being able to navigate that portion of it, and make sure that you're regulating all the times and whatnot. So, yeah.
Just want to re-emphasize this because I discovered more of it thanks to your appearance on the original polygyny panel that we did. Stage free of a game is family, raising family, building legacy. A lot of guys just don't see that as game, but ultimately, with family, you get the full benefits of a woman. her loyalty, her support of your mission, even if it's just one woman or multiple wives, her reproductiveness, you get to have children together. So it's much more than just dating around. It's being part of a team and having that leadership. And if you, where did I have this? Um, Let me fucking find where that is. Oh, yeah. If you can keep a woman around, but you can't maintain your game, aka leadership, your life can easily descend into misery. So it's one of those things where, family game, someone who's doing a lot of dating is not necessarily going to understand that until they get to that point. But once you're there, it starts to make a lot more sense.
No,
And
absolutely.
it really, I didn't even consider, like, in the terms that you and Rob put it before a few months back. You get the full benefits of a woman when you're in a marriage relationship with her, have children with her. You get the full fucking benefits.
Well, yeah, no, and I that's why I really appreciated even having the discussion, with slash debate with Mr. Lucario there, because it was, again, I came from where he was at, and to me it was okay. Yeah, no, I get it. You can pull a lot of women and it's fun, but you're ultimately losing out in the end for what these women can actually be, and if they're helping you with the direction that God has given you and where you're moving with it, oh my gosh, many hands make for light work. Let's all come in together and pull our resources and pull our abilities, and hey, let's kick ass and take names for sure. So, as far as much as the hookup culture, sure, I'd be lying if I didn't say it wasn't a good time. But like I said, I always felt empty in the end there, because there was still something missing. I was not achieving that ultimate level of game of having a actual family that I knew that no matter what, we were ride or die for each other. So I like that.
That's at least the second time today. A few hours back, um, Justin Adams was talking about the whole thing of, the mature level of dating around, sleeping with a bunch of women just isn't fulfilling. It's time to do another thing,
Mm.
beyond, more purposeful, more meaningful. It's not just fucking about that. So that is interesting for sure. I'm not sure when Craig's going to jump on. He said he would come in at some point, but both you and Craig mentioned that you split your time between households. So when I first heard about the polygyny thing, I got that image in my brain where it's one household, one property, one massive fucking family in Utah, for example. Why for you? And I also wonder for Craig if he jumps in here pretty soon. Why two different households?
Well, actually, that's the ultimate goal of what that you described is actually probably the most ideal, because let me tell you, if God ever did call me for a third wife, I could not do a third household. That would just right now, even with two households, it's a struggle at times. Today's a perfect example. Wife two is sick right now and she's not feeling all that well. I would love nothing more than to sit there and be able to do the little things, like simply as, hey, let me bring you some soup, something, some medication. What can I do to help you out? But I'm not there right now, and there's a good 15 miles between my households currently right now. So, again, there is that drawback to it. This is the current situation because when I came into this, I had already bought a home with my first wife, or my fiance at the time, and then I met my second, who had her own place, and it was always the end goal to obviously come into one household together, where we are all going to be, one big happy family cohabiting together. It's just that for various work reasons, where she works right now, where I work, and so forth, we just haven't pulled the trigger on moving everybody in right now. But because this is something that I chose to move forward in, it's ultimately my responsibility to make sure that the time is divided equally. So I just right now currently am going between the two households, but Lord willing, in this year actually, I would like to definitely see us all moving it together into one household. It'll probably be a new household because that's something that nobody ever feels like, oh, well, this was her house first, and now I'm the mistress coming into it or anything like that. Better to just, hey, let's pull the resources together, go house shopping, buy something that we all love, agree on the area, and then that way everybody comes in there feeling, hey, these are the queens, this is the king of our castle, and we all achieve this together. That would be my recommendation for people. But yeah, no, it definitely makes it a heck of a lot easier to make sure everybody's under the same household. We don't sleep in the same bedrooms, even when we do, like, because we've gone places, we've traveled before. We will definitely always maintain that respect for each other's privacy and whatnot within the bedroom. So it's not like we're just out there having big old massive orgies where we all sleep together and whatnot. No, I alternate my time in the bedrooms with my wives, fulfilling both my marital responsibilities as a husband to both of them. And yeah, but they do appreciate, they're not bisexual, so it's not like they're trying to be with each other in that manner. Carl, you said you were interested in embarking on this or whatnot. What have you been looking into?
Yeah, so actually just give me 1 minute, all right?
Sure.
Just got to make sure they're not rioting outside. Yeah, and in Riot Francisco. Yeah, he's giving us a tour of the place.
Yeah. Home for the holidays. So actually taking a red eye back tonight to Lima, so I'll be back there. Yeah, so I've been exploring that similarly to you. Like, I've been in a lot of conscious communities, spiritual communities, in the polyamory thing a bit, and I definitely don't like that. I don't think that that's a healthy way of doing things. And I've been exploring the, multiple wives right now. I'm dating someone. Can you guys see me, by the way?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Is it cutting off or? Okay, cool. Yeah. And I actually just had a conversation a couple weeks ago with someone I'm dating right now around, okay, if we're going to move forward into relationship, etc., this is something I'm looking at. This is my vision, etc. And right now we're exploring whether that would work with us, etc. So it's still early dating this person's, but just letting her know the truth that this is the path I would be on. I am on. So I haven't necessarily been looking at any texts. I haven't necessarily been looking at how to do it. I'm just following my heart, I've been doing a lot of masculine, feminine polarity work for about 8 to 10 years now. So understanding what my needs are as a man, understanding, what a lot of women's needs are. In fact, one thing I was going to share with Brian before he left was I see a lot of benefits for the women I'm dating in this, right? To not have to be available all the time for all of my needs, to not have to, okay, I need this at this time, you have to be that. And even some of the beliefs I have about what keeps the spark alive. A little bit of, I don't know if healthy competition is the right word, but but in a way that's honest, in a way that's very transparent. I'm a very honest person. I don't lie, play games. It's like I am who I am, take it or leave it. And it's interested me a lot where I don't think anyone should be sacrificing their needs. I shouldn't be sacrificing my needs waiting for her to get ready, and she shouldn't be sacrificing her needs of, keeping the spark alive. And this seems like a setup that can do that. If obviously I'm very early in my journey, I understand the amount of communication that would have to go into this, the amount of caring about the other person, deep listening, all of that. But it's something that seems very interesting and exciting to me.
Yeah, we always sit there. Me and Rob Kowalski run a coaching program for biblical marriage and for men who are interested in coming into this and how to do it properly. And before, interestingly enough, in the way the structure is set up in our coaching program is, the course, the lover and master are the two last courses of the program. In the beginning, you're going to find, the captain course, which is all about establishing your frame. It's all about making sure that you can't lead anybody into anything until you know yourself where you're going. So
Yeah.
polygyny is a result of patriarchy. Patriarchy being the real lesson in all of this. And
Mhm,
there's
mhm.
there's plenty of men in the coaching program who sit there and say, you know what, I probably will never actually move forward with finding another wife, but my wife always needs to know that it's always on the table.
Yeah,
Period. That
yeah.
it is always a viable option. And we interestingly, jokingly, will refer back to Adam and Eve because everybody likes to bring up the debate of, well, it wasn't God's original design. That they use that a lot every time in our debates. It wasn't part of the original design, therefore it wasn't, it's not righteous, now. And I will fire back saying, well, you know what was part of God's original design? Vegetarianism, nudism, incest. Those were all part of God's original design, but God later on came and gave clear prohibitions to some of these practices, saying, hey, they were no longer necessary. Where was the one for polygyny? Just because he gave Adam only one wife didn't mean that's because that was all he ever intended for every single man from creation there on out. He probably gave Adam only one wife because he had never seen a woman before and didn't want to overwhelm him with everything that a woman that comes with a woman. Clearly,
Maverick, how many ribs do you guys have?
I believe we have 7 ribs on each side.
Also
14.
14 wives.
Yeah. Right. I mean, well, going back to the Isaiah prophecy 4:1, in that day 7 women will cling to one man. Oh, so there's something about that number 7. There's 7 churches
Oh,
in the book of Revelations too. Everybody
I'm
goes, well,
onto something here.
yeah, the body of Christ is a church, a church. I'm like, no, well, actually, there's 7 churches that he refers to in Revelation. So, it's something about that number. So we'll see. But the bottom line is that, again, you're going back to, again, you're establishing that framework of understanding that, if like you said earlier, that healthy competition, understanding that if a woman can't put herself on a pedestal, indicating that, I'm your only option, and without me, there's nothing. No, 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 no. Had there been another wife in Eden, maybe when the serpent was talking to Eve about doing this, they could have said, "Well, you go off and do what you're going to do, but we're we're not going to be there. And if you do that, you're going to be the one that's outcasted. This wife's
Mhm.
staying over here because she's being adhering to the rules and regulations that are established for this paradise." And I think that
Yeah,
that's really ultimately what it comes down to, is when women understand that they're not the only one. There is something of humility that comes in there that says, "Hey, I need to walk my P's and Q's, and I need to be, uplifting to my husband, not a point of contention, within this relationship. Because if not, somebody's going to outshine me, and there may be, I might be finding myself, you know, no longer a part of it. And I think that that's, very, very healthy within a relationship. The same thing for men too. With the coaching of men, iron sharpens iron, according to the
mhm.
Bible. We're here to sharpen each other and keep each other on our A game. Why? Because there might be other men on the outsider who are not part of our community, not part of our group, who are looking to take what is ours. So we're going to make sure that we have the most masculine, most successful men, setting these people up to be successful in life, and how to do this properly, and keeping your family and your home in order. Because if not, guess what? There might be somebody else who comes along, younger, richer, better looking like ice over here, and who who will ultimately just take what you've got. So you better be ready
Yeah,
for it. So let's lift each other up and build each other strong, and make sure that you're building your house on rock and not on sand.
yeah. And I think one thing that's been interesting to see is, and I don't know too much about the religious aspects, but you just see where society's been going, right? In the red pill, hypergamy's been, the biggest buzzword used in the red pill, and it's factually true, right? A lot of
Mhm.
women are dating a few men. It's 80. I think the stats 80% of the women dating 20% of the men, and this is a society of a lot of free will, especially on the part of the women. Women have more free will to date how they want to date now than at least they did any other time in my lifetime. And you are consistently seeing women saying, okay, I don't want to share you, but I'd rather share you than just be with the average Joe, a guy who's just working a regular day job, etc.
Mhm.
And I've been in 2 different relationships where we've had this conversation. The woman is, where I've been open on my side and closed on their side. I've been in 2 relationships, and every single time she's the initial thing is, okay, I'm not thrilled about this at the beginning because of societal conditioning, but if I have to choose, I'm going to choose sharing rather than settling, sharing rather than settling. And to me, because we're in a time where there's so much freedom and liberation for women, to me, it's showing a window into their nature that when they face this choice, a lot of women, you can't say all of them, but a lot of women through deep conversation, through deep reflection, are saying, you know what? I'd rather share someone I can respect, someone I can feel safe around, someone who can guide me deeper, rather than just be with another guy who's going to be, drinking tequila shots with me and be monogamous with him. So I almost sense that women are making this choice right now. They're
Yeah.
making this choice that we would rather share a good man rather than settle for an average Joe.
No,
So that's
absolutely.
been an interesting thing. It's like it's not just something I'm asking for. They're asking for it in terms of not asking for it overtly, but asking for it in terms of if I had the choice to share you or not share you, I'll share you, sort of thing.
Right, right. Well, and I
Yeah.
think that the feminist movement has not done a lot of favors for women as a whole. Obviously, like you said, there's the exception to the rule where some people are just naturally career driven. That's what they want. They want to be independent. They want to, put their focuses there. And kudos to them. Again, we're not here to knock anybody's personal choices for what they choose for their life. However, it does go against the natural feminine energy that women want, and most
Yeah.
feminine who really want to embrace their feminine energy aren't interested in being the breadwinner, aren't interested in making sure that they're the ones, maintaining their household and this and that. They want a man who's going to come in there and be a man, and who's
Yeah.
going to be a good provider, a good protector, and give a good leader, and lead them into something that they ultimately feel comfortable in. And I
Yeah.
think that it goes back to, yes, establishing that framework for yourself so that your women do feel comfortable following you in this particular life, to know that, hey, he's just not acting on, again, going back to, Lucario's debate, just on lustful desires. He's just going to use me, get what he wants for a couple of years, and then kick me to the curb. Well, no, especially for the religious, aspect of it, we don't believe in divorce. God hates
Hmm.
divorce. So we're
Hmm.
understanding that this is a lifelong commitment. If you come into this, understand this is for life. And if you choose to leave, you leave with basically with the clothes on your back, because again, that's biblical law. You're not entitled to anything. So
Yeah.
not subjecting yourself to the state, to where the state now controls your marriage, and the state can come in and say, well, now you have to give her 50% and this and that. That's why we don't do that. We give God what is God's, and we go by what the laws of Torah are, and not, the secular church, or the state, for that matter. So, all of
Yeah.
these things, are of major importance in your initial framework in doing this. But yeah,
Hmm.
you're 100% right. The feminist movement, again, and wanting to empower women, fine, so be it. That might work for, again, a select few, but ultimately, at the end of the day, more and more women are waking up and saying, "Hey, this freaking career, damn the woman whoever made it permissible
Yeah.
for a woman to work. Like, I don't want
I
to
know
do that."
some very pro-feminists, like the leaders of it, who are now saying, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I've actually coached several women who've made their millions and then reconnect with their femininity. And that's all they want, is to reconnect with their femininity. So the
Yeah,
lie is revealing itself with a lot of
yeah.
women.
My first wife here, she's a school teacher, and she loves what she does. She
Yeah.
absolutely loves her job, and it's been a good career, for her. And now that the light is there at the end of the tunnel, I guarantee
Hmm.
you it's not because she's burnt out, because she's even talked about, like, I still want to have a side hustle or do something when I'm retired. But she's looking forward to retirement, and
Yeah.
she doesn't want, not having to do that daily commute and this and that, and realizing, like, hey, honey, and when I came into the mix, it was like, I will support you if you love your career, if you love what you do. I want to be a support in that.
Hmm.
So I will permit you to continue to work. However, at any given time that you want to pull the plug and say, I'm done, go for it. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
that's my job anyway. So that's
Yeah.
for me to figure out, not you. Your job
Yeah.
is to make sure that, and that was always my rule to both of them, is like, as long as I don't ever see that your responsibilities as a wife are not being met, I will say
Hmm.
nothing
Hmm.
about you wanting to work. I
Yeah.
do expect, obviously, to be able to come home and have my home in order, not come into a pigsty, food's going to be cooked, we're going to
Yeah.
meal prep, or my laundry's done, those types of things. And again, oh, that's so chauvinistic. No, 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 no. Responsibilities go both ways too. My wives,
Yeah.
I always use that example. Do I know how to cook? Yes. Do I cook? Very rarely. Why? Because I have two wives to cook for me.
Yeah.
Just like my wives can sure as heck open up their own car door too. They have hands, but ask either of my wives, do I ever permit them to open up their own car doors? Very, very rarely. This just is chivalry. I will come in and give
Yeah.
payback. If I am out there, do I expect them to be out there mowing the lawn? No, that's a man's deal. It's like
Yeah.
I do the thing that men are supposed to do. And you can call it old fashioned or being what it is, but again, to each his own. This is how we
So
run it.
I
That's
wanted
how
to
we do it.
speak to that is because I completely receive everything you're saying and it's received very well. And what brought me into my journey around dating and masculine, feminine work and all was a spiritual context. Spirituality is what brought me into this. And understanding that when I'm close to my nature as a man, I'm thriving mentally, everything in life. And when the women I'm dating are close to their nature as a woman, how they were born to be, they seem to be thriving. And I think when it comes to this topic of polygyny, right, there's so much Instagram, Andrew Tate, all this stuff around flash and looks and the level that you and I are speaking at are around, it's a very deep spiritual concept around just what makes things work, what makes people actually feel, in the women's case, safer, in the man's case, more empowered. And for me, what has even brought me onto exploring this path has been nothing other than what is the most spiritually aligned thing to my biological nature and the biological nature of my woman slash women. And I think that's the message that's really important because when you have this topic of multiple women, guys are immediately going to think Dan Bilzerian, right? They're going to think models, disconnected. You're talking about something very connected, right? Deep conversations, deep alignment with everything of who she is at a deeper level. And I think that's the message that I would want people to hear is that this is not something you're doing for an Instagram story, which a lot of people in the world have picked up do it for the clout or the validation. This is actually doing it for a deeper level of spiritual alignment, and I think that's to me that's the most important message here.
Yeah, no, definitely. You definitely need to be feeling moved and called for what it is that you're doing, and again, for myself as a Christian man, going against the secular Christian church and the
Mm,
priests and the pastors on the pulpit, it was like, okay, I didn't ask to be put on this hill. God put me on this hill, but now I'll die on it for sure. After researching everything that I've done and realizing that using the concordances and the lexicon to actually read scripture the way it was originally written and going, oh my gosh, we've been fed this lie. And the
yeah.
whole saying, it's easier to fool someone than to convince someone that they've been fooled. And that's the struggle now is getting
Mm,
my fellow Christian brothers, to realize, hey, you guys, we drank the Kool-Aid, myself
yeah.
included. I was once on the same, you know, side of this debate that you're on now, going, no, no, I'm okay admitting
Yeah.
I'm a sinner, that I'm out there fornicating without real intention on marrying these women, but ultimately, no, it's one man, one woman, period. That's how God designed it. And as I started reading in the original language, I'm like, that's not what that says.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
that's another one. The big one is the number one man shall, to leave his
Yeah.
mother and father and cling to his wife, one, and the two shall become one flesh. I'm like, no, the word is echad in Hebrew, and echad means
Mm,
unite, means united. How many states in the United States of America? How many countries in the United Nations? It's not singular. It's you can
yeah.
have multiple, states and multiple countries under one unification, under one banner. That's what a household is. And
Mm,
and when the Bible goes on to later on to give you clear prescriptive in the law of what you should do, it's like, well, why would God give you regulation on what he just downright forbids? Wouldn't he just be like any of the other commandments versus thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not
yeah.
marry multiple wives? Why not just downright make it a prohibition versus regulating it and saying, no, this is how you do it righteously? So
Yeah.
there are things in there to make sure that you're taking. I always say, if the Bible never contradicts itself, and if you find a contradiction somewhere in there between Old Testament, New Testament, whatever, it means you have the wrong piece of the puzzle. You're not reading it correctly. So
Mm,
do the work, pull back the onion layers, and find out exactly what it is that makes it, fit properly. And unfortunately, we live in a day and age with instant gratification. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody wants to take the time to deep dive the subjects unless it's something that they're ultimately moved by, and myself included. It was much easier for me to just be the player back in the day and not have the responsibilities that came with it. But ultimately, God was sitting there tugging on my heartstrings, going, my son, this is not for you. There is a righteous way of doing things, and since then, again, I've been blessed tremendously. So I definitely will die on this hill now, and open up as many eyes and pop that red pill for those that seek that truth over, that blue pill and just living in their own lies.
Yeah. So I got a question. I got to go in a couple minutes, but kind of one more thing, which I'm curious about, which might help the audience as well. Something I've thought about is, I'm not, I've been to church a couple times, I've created a connection with God, etc. But a lot of the people I know who are devout Christians, I sense them to, in the word of their Christianity, allow a lot of emasculation in their life. I almost feel like they're being fed emasculation by the church. And again, I have very little experience. So almost every Christian guy I know is a very good, most of them tend to be good human beings. They tend to be heart-centered, et cetera, et cetera. But they tend to be a little putting themselves beneath their own dominance, beneath their own masculinity. And their religion is an excuse for them to be less of a man, if that's the case. I see it over and over and over again. And my question to you is, like, do you have any thoughts on where this is coming from, where this came from? Because I'll call it the age of degeneracy, right? The last 20 to 10 years. We're Californian guys, right? People stopped going to church and they stopped going to they started going to EDC, music festivals, etc. Literally religion was replaced by degeneracy. And I think we're seeing the results of that right now. So why is strength, dominance, leadership, etc., so frowned upon in the church, if it is? And let me know if I'm wrong, but at least I know a lot of people. And how can the actual word of the text, because it seems like you are looking at the origin, how can that allow men to actually realize their masculinity is a force for good and not a force for evil, which is what social dynamics have told them?
Right. Well, I mean, it's a great question. And yes, a lot of it has to do with the misunderstanding Paul the Apostle's teachings in the New Testament. A lot of it shifted over to this ideal of equality at this point in time. That everybody was, there was no longer Jew or Gentile, there was no longer male or female, that all were created, equal, in God's image and so forth, which is correct. But they're talking specifically about grace. The sacrifice of Christ in itself was no longer going to be for a specific chosen people. It didn't matter if you were Jew or Gentile. It didn't matter if you were man or woman. It didn't matter. There was nothing else that mattered at that moment in time. The grace and the sacrifice of the Lamb was made for all equally. That's what they're referring to. But unfortunately, the New Testament puts forth a lot of this. Well, the Old Testament no longer applies. Torah no longer is subject. But I sit there and I remind men of in the book of Matthew, when Christ is giving his sermon, he says, "Know that I did not come to abolish the old law or the prophets. Not a single stroke of the pen shall change, or jot of the pen shall change until heaven and earth pass." Well, last time I checked, heaven and earth are still here. So that means the old laws, the Old Testament, still is very much relevant today. People forget that line that Christ himself said. So when you go back to the Old Testament, the time of the patriarchs, everything there is set up in place. There is a hierarchy. There is Yahweh, the Father. There is the Son, Yeshua, Messiah. There is man, there is woman, there is children. That is his lineage. That is how he designed it for it to be. And that never, ever changes. Now, when it sits there and says, Christ, women, be subject to your men in all things as you would Christ unto the Lord. That's all things. It doesn't say some things. It says all things. So you are to submit to your man the way your man submits to the Messiah. And if men are walking in faith and showing their women that, hey, I'm subject to a higher authority just like you are to me, it makes it much easier for them to follow, because they're seeing that they're following somebody who is actually seeking guidance for righteous reasons. Every time we have a dispute in my household or there's a discussion, the ultimate truth for us is the Bible. So what do? I open up the God's word and I say, let's find this out together. Because if I'm wrong, I will be the first one to say, hey, my bad. I acted out of what God's
Yeah.
word says. Let's
Yeah.
figure this out together. So I'm not subject to sit there and say, well, no matter what I say, that's law and I'm right. No, I have to be in subject to my Messiah the way you are in subject to me. But there is that part of the framework will never change. You need to understand that you are to be in subjection to me. You are to be submissive to me under all things. So even if
Okay.
I'm incorrect, they'll know that I'll find the correction and I'll correct, I'll wait for Christ to put me on the right path. He's done it several times where I'm straying away and he goes, get back to where you need to be. So
Yeah.
I'm by no means
So you're
perfect.
saying it's more of a misinterpretation than necessarily a selling out? Because sometimes my mind goes to, is the church just selling out to modern created social society created, feminist principles? And you're saying that there's also a misinterpretation piece.
There's a misinterpretation, but also too there is a bit of a selling out from the secular church, and I'll tell you why. Because you
Yeah.
go in there, there's a lot of pastors and a lot of preachers that I guarantee you know this stuff. They went to seminary school, they know Greek, they know Hebrew, and yet they're not going to come in and teach this stuff in their church. Why? Because I guarantee you they come in there and they start preaching to the church where, let's face it, the modern Christian church right now we're outranked 3-1, 3 women to every 1 man. I
Yeah.
guarantee
Yeah.
you they're going to lose half their congregation because women don't want to hear this. Women are going to be like, wait a minute, what? My husband's allowed to marry multiple women,
And I've
and
heard
I
a
have to.
lot of people say the church, they're just preaching feminist principles in the sermon. That's what I've heard people say that. And
Well,
that's nuts to me. That's
and
nuts to me.
a lot of denominations have gone that way.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know, like especially the Methodist Church. They've started moving towards the LGBTQ agenda and this and that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening, unfortunately,
Yeah.
within
Julianne
the
makes a
body of
good point
Christ.
here. The religion leads the household rather than the religious man. And I think that's probably what happened, right? That's how I feel around social dynamics with Instagram, right? Dating all these girls. It's like, who's your father? Your father's Instagram. Absolutely. Like, where did you get these values from? You got it from Instagram. So, not to
Mhm.
change the topic too much, Mav, but I think this comes to something that's really important to me, and that's the head of the household, the father archetype, the fact that, this is the father has the vision, the father has the mission, and people are in support of
Yeah.
that, as opposed to having another leader, which is Instagram, the pastor, whoever it is, who's
Mhm.
saying, "Don't listen to the man of the house." To me, that's a big variable.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and that's why, as much as we don't necessarily glorify or idolatry the platforms themselves, we need to utilize the platforms to make sure that we are putting out enough content and enough open discussions where we can have these conversations and healthy debates with people to say, yeah, no, that's not the way it goes. So we'll fight fire with fire and use these platforms to sit there and say, like, hey, there is also a message, giving you the opposition to what all this other crap that you're hearing out there. That's just ultimately, again, and you're talking about people who may have different ultimate truths. Again, this is strictly from somebody who is a Bible believer. That is our absolute truth. Now having this discussion, although we found a lot of common ground with was it
Yeah.
Abdi, the Muslim that we had on the polygynist panel. Because there was a Muslim on.
Oh, Abo American.
Abu American. There you go. Abu American. That's right. So yeah, and again, we have differences in religious belief systems, but there was a lot of common ground that we were able to find even in that discussion. So again, ultimately, it goes back to the framework of, is patriarchy, when done correctly, going to be the benefit to a successful marriage or relationship? And I firmly believe that yes, it is.
Yeah.
Mm. I
Makes a
find
lot of
that
sense.
interesting. It's like who's your daddy? Your daddy's Instagram. Your daddy's OnlyFans, rather than a real male role model. That's an interesting way of putting
To
it.
me, that's been the root of where everything went wrong. Is, I always say this. One of the things I always say is, like, feminine nature hasn't changed, guys. Like, women are still submissive. They still follow a trend, follow the leader. It's happening. It's just that the leader has shifted. It used to be the man of the house. Now the leader tends to be social dynamics, right? We learn it in school, especially us Californians. There's certain dogma, there's certain rule sets that are being taught in school. This is how you have to be a man. This is how you have to be a woman. And so many times fathers are being suspended from schools for just having their own rule set for the house, you know, for their children. So to me, this is really where it's gone wrong, is there's still an element of women following a leader. It's just the leader has become an institute instead of the head of the house.
Yeah.
This
King
is
Black's
making
got a
so
question.
much more sense.
I
Yeah, go
firmly
ahead.
believe that this is what's why we're in the situation we're in right now.
Yeah.
Damn.